minutes for discussion. So the first presenter for our panel 3 is Helena. I don't know whether it's French or is Spanish. Vicentic is an independent researcher from Serbia, and Omeina Absalam from the Sahrawi Human Rights Advocates. And the topic of their presentation is Spaces of Aid and the Communities of Solidarity, Sahrawi people on their path to self-determination. So you have 15 minutes. Please continue with the presentation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kaya. I would like to share the screen to be able to show my presentation. Just a second. While I'm trying to locate my presentation, I would just like to say that my name is Jelena Vicentic, and I am an independent researcher from Belgrade, from Serbia. The paper which I will be presenting today is a collaborative work produced together with my friend and colleague Omeima Abdeslam, who is a Sahrawi human rights activist based in Geneva, Switzerland. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So before I start, I would just like to thank the organizers for putting on this very important and highly relevant event. And it is an honor and a rare privilege to be able to participate in a conference that is dealing with Western Sahara. And it is particularly amazing to speak at an event where so many of the people whose work we respect a lot and whose work we've used in our research are also appearing. So thanks again for making this possible, and particularly thanks for making it possible for me to do this online. So the paper that I will be presenting, Spaces of Aid and Communities of Solidarity, Sahrawi people on their path to self-determination, it explores the limits of aid in the specific case of the Sahrawi refugee camps in the Tindouf area of Algeria. And it also explores the significance of the lifeline enabled through informal solidarity movements and volunteer networks, waiting for decolonization and advocating for the rights to self-determination to be exercised through ongoing UN processes under the auspices of international law. For almost 5 decades, Sahrawi people have been subjected to a life in limbo. In the aftermath of the war and the occupation of their ancestral territories, the Sahrawi population has suffered long-term health and safety-related effects of the armed conflict. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced, living as refugees in what was originally envisaged as emergency refugee accommodations in the most arid part of the Sahara Desert. The singular source of sustenance supply to this population in waiting is presented as aid. The interconnectedness of solidarity movements and Sahrawi communities, however, offers an alternative decolonial aligned approach to development, enabling an essential prospect for survival of the spirit. These complex cultural adaptations involve mutual aid, traditional law, legal custom, and knowledge network development through interpersonal sharing. Thousands of displaced Sahrawi people maintain cultural knowledge and social cohesion through traditional cultural practices, which include openness and hospitality and knowledge exchange as a way of being in the world, in accordance with the hospitality and knowledge exchange, in accordance with the nature of the desert, in harmony with the passing of time and the life cycles, while resisting oblivion with truth sharing, as stated by Bukhari Ahmed in a work by Professor Awach that cited a lot of the Bukhari Ahmed's thoughts. So this paper relates the Sahrawi survival strategies through a decolonial reading of a sample of the academic production on Western Sahara and ethnographic insights into the dynamics of solidarity initiatives present in the refugee camps. And by decolonial reading, we mean reading how modernity coloniality is at work generating images of the world or reality that prevent us from seeing what is in front of us. We argue that the specificity of the Sahrawi case, Sahrawi people's endurance, and the durability of the global Friends of Sahara movement can be traced to the Sahrawi traditional guidance in processes of mutual knowledge production and solidarity as a relationship and the process. As we all know, Sahrawi refugee camps have always been open to visitors, and visitors come to the camps to provide support, perform humanitarian functions within wider structures of solidarity and aid, but also to conduct research on, to study and write about the Sahrawi people, frequently using the setting of the camps as an angle, but not taking into consideration or acknowledging the complex cultural adaptations that involve survival, mutual aid, traditional law and legal custom, and knowledge sharing. Many political scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, legal scholars have written, researched Sahrawi people and their governance structures. They've researched Sahrawi position on self-determination, political organization, matters of sovereignty, state formation, refugee camp management, position of Sahrawi women. But as we know, often enough, regardless of the fact of this prolonged and way overdue struggle for decolonization, Sahrawi people attract hypercritical scrutiny. The disavowal and hypercriticism come in many forms, not just regarding the staunch attitude towards the issue of self-determination. As Zuns and Mandi demonstrate, even the Sahrawi identity is often questioned, problematized as inauthentic or incomplete. Buharima Ahmed, Sahrawi diplomat and thinker, discussed this negotiation in his early work, the move from an embeddedness in the dogma of tradition towards following an ethic of life and future, grounded in the wisdom offered by African anti-colonial leaders, alert to the divisive ambitions of the colonizer. It was Ahmed that pointed out early on that the Realpolitik as framing of expert position on Western Sahara operated as an exclusionary rhetoric, means to dismiss the capacities and the determination of the Sahrawi people. The Realpolitik approach continues to be a method utilized to claim absence of pragmatism in the Sahrawi demand for self-determination in the wider power context, thus deeming it unfeasible. It is also consistently applied in the attempts to reduce otherwise evident significance of factors of solidarity and moral obligation to suppress colonialism. Here, I would like to just make a quick digression, if that's at all possible, to the problem of forgottenness, as this is something that we've given a lot of space to in our research. And already yesterday, Sahara being forgotten and Sahrawi people being forgotten refugees, forgotten colony, forgotten crisis, got mentioned several times. So this discourse of forgottenness, in this particular case of Western Sahara and the Sahrawi people, functions as a protective shield, an absolution of responsibility of the so-called international community. The mobilization of the forgottenness discourse acts as a reaffirmation of erasure from public attention and memory, ensuring that the equilibrium of the current international order will not be challenged or disturbed. Introduced and reintroduced as forgotten, the unresolved issue of self-determination of the Sahrawi people is moderated for the public as a less pressing one, appealing to the reasoning of urgency. Meanwhile, the formal question of unfinished process of decolonization altogether remains reserved for the less accessible diplomatic venues under the mandate of the UN. With many loose ends and many strings attached, any attempts at resolving it is disruptive to the general coherence of the discourse of international law and governance, or revealing the contingent nature of signification of the myth of international community. So between the International Court of Justice, UN Security Council, European Union or African Union, and a wide range of policies and interests involved, including US and France, EU hesitance when it comes to illegal extractive practices in occupied Sahara, as well as the greening of the occupation in Western Sahara. The most desirable way of dealing with the situation is not dealing with it at all. Isolating the situation to the space of forgottenness provides for a longer-term safe avoidance. The stability of placement into forgottenness ensures what Zunes and Mundy had termed low visibility silent march for North Africa's untapped natural resources, keeping it off the media radar, but also disconnected from understanding of causal chains of exploitation and securitization in the region. In other words, people are forgotten, occupation is forgotten, but resources existing and perspective have never ceased to be within the sight of or interest. Meanwhile, Sahrawi people remain aware of all the geopolitical intricacies of their predicament, the role of the major EU member states in perpetuation of it, continual colonial relationships, extractive presence of the corporate actors, and the greenwashing of the occupation performed by Morocco. Their absence from the media stage is sometimes attributed to the inability to engage modern channels of communication or reach out to decision makers. The prevalent method of promoting the Sahrawi case is through a Friends of Sahara lobbies system, a network of volunteer activists, all having a connection to Western Sahara through lived experience of solidarity. So when it comes to this particular network, understanding the limitations of the channels of international communication on an institutional level, Sahrawi people have been relying on an adjusted form of a traditional practice involving direct communication on an individual and collective level, claiming the right to be seen, borne witness to. This practice of visibility prohibits visitors from ignorance and presents them with the duty of sharing. It opens up a space for Sahrawi futurity and understanding of the terms of the resolution, with the one precondition: to see the Sahara very differently, as a place that can best be articulated by Saharans, who are themselves eminent scholars of their own history, land, and culture. So Friends of Sahara networks, to keep it short, have always, as a matter of fact, insisted on this inseparability of the matter of humanitarian assistance to the political issues of the refugee camps, human rights violations in the territories occupied by Morocco, and the question of unresolved decolonization of Western Sahara and the self-determination of Sahrawi people. Humanitarian intervention, always seen as a political in itself, as humanitarianisms always are political, has always been seen as an interference in the lives of the communities, and therefore consultation had always been seen as an obligatory element of cooperation. I would here like to read a quote by a long-term volunteer, a health worker, a surgeon from the Basque Country, Gemma Anda, as her description of the circumstance of the Sahrawi people in the camps is quite relevant to this day, even though this particular statement was made in 2007. Camps are a complex place. It is a difficult environment. Survival is difficult, self-sufficiency impossible. Sometimes aid is the only available resource, as the situation in the camps at times becomes extremely serious. That makes hunger into an instrument of political pressure, the control of political will through the digestive tract by means of hunger. This is something that we have seen and that some international organizations have done with absolute lack of scruples, disguising their actions with issues that had to do with formal aspects, not substance.
Oh.
So the volunteer engagement in the Sahrawi refugee camps fulfills the function of participatory witnessing. The outputs, or all of those activities which are put into place after the visitors have gone back to their homes from the refugee camps, regardless of the fact whether those activities were previously planned or not, involving wider audiences through social media platforms, public events, publications, or solely personal circles of families and friends of the volunteers. Those outputs present an extension of the Sahrawi way of sharing and passing information and knowledge, thus expanding the worlds of the listeners, simultaneously unsettling them. The designation of a friend of Sahara covers a wide spectrum of opinions, attitudes, and positions, even performative ones, as it positions and engages a person, a volunteer, an activist, or aid worker, in a communicative process of solidarity in relation and mutuality with the Sahrawi people. In conclusion, decolonization has received multiple meanings in recent decades, mostly pointing in the direction of institutional improvement through more inclusive policy and expansion of the knowledge base. This has contributed to evasion of understanding of decolonization as matter of land and life, and neglect for the circumstance of ongoing need for anti-colonial action. The unresolved matter of colonization in case of Sahrawi people and their lands is far from metaphorical. The apparent layering or hypercriticism of the Sahrawi situation works towards removal of the materiality of occupation of Western Sahara and transposing of the colonization into the sphere of the hypothetical and abstract. Simultaneously, the evasion of the ongoing injustices of human rights abuses and resource exploitation in the occupied territories, with a number of European states and institutions complicit, through normative and corrective focus on the imagined internal issues, is committed as a move to innocence. Sahrawi people in their plight for decolonization and self-determination have been relying on a traditional practice of communication on an individual and collective level, hosting, sharing, exchanging knowledge, claiming the right to be seen, borne witness to in a situation of prolonged injustice. The practice of visibility prohibits the visiting external actors from performing ignorance and presents them with the duty of sharing. The platform created for this exchange, despite many hindrances, functions within the sovereign Sahrawi cultural space as a part of the Sahrawi strategy for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Helen. That was very informative. I learned a lot myself because I had the opportunity of being in the camps there. She explores or interrogates the limits of aid and enforced solidarity for self-determination among Sahrawi people in desert conditions. And the most important thing for us, is especially myself as a person who is dealing with indigenous knowledge, is how the people there in the desert conditions use complex indigenous adaptation strategies in the desert conditions to self-determination and also to ensure that they survive in such conditions. And the gender issues also, which is very important. When we were there ourselves, we saw how women there in different ways, including informal agricultural ways, survive in such conditions. And the most important thing is the fact that the Saharan people are forgotten refugees in a crisis situation in Western Sahara. Thank you very much for that information. The second presentation is from Khalid Siba, Center for Studies and Documentation. And the topic...
Professor Kaya, just a last minute change in the schedule. We got the word from Khadija, the last one presentation, that she will not be attending due to personal reasons. And the next presenter as well cannot connect himself, is having internet problems. So we'll pass right into the debate phase with Elena, if you do not mind, because we cannot have those in the last to the presenters.
Okay, so it gives us much time to discuss, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, we are going directly to the debate phase with Elena, our first and only presenter of the first panel, to internet problems with the second one, and personal problems with the last one. So we're going to debate. I'm going to open the floor for questionings for Elena. So
okay, thank you.
We have a question here on the floor, on the live floor. Someone trying to ask. I will.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your contribution. It was very interesting. Having been in the refugee camps several times and knowing the situation, I would like to know what your opinion is in particular to the fact that thousands of people from solidarity movements, journalists, political activists, human rights activists are in the camps, are aware of the situation, but it seems that there is no output when they come back, or better said, only a small percentage has an output when they come back from the refugee camps. I would like to know your opinion on that, Jelena, if you don't mind.
Can we collect a number of questions? Oh, you are the chairperson, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Do we
okay
collect?
if you wish to collect more questions. Yeah.
Yes, I think that will be more in terms of time.
No, if we have time, you can respond if you want.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I actually now I'm regretting having kind of cut down on my presentation. If I had known that I would have all this.
Sorry for that. Sorry for that.
Yeah. If I had known that I would have all this space and time, I would have actually extended my presentation to cover some of these bits. So I mentioned at some point that as a matter of fact, there is a wide variety of people that are included under this category, because the particular category that we are discussing in this paper of Friends of Sahara, this is not something that conceptually overlaps with the notion of an ally or a white ally, otherwise framed in many of the indigenous like approaches to analyzing group or social movements that include indigenous people. So as a matter of fact, we are talking here about a large group of people with very different roles to fulfill in the camps. Some arrive there with a job and no particular, let's say, attachment, connection, or prior knowledge about the situation, the history of Sahrawi people, the history of Western Sahara. Some have already something that we could easily call an intergenerational connection. Many Spanish activists have been involved and have had these family-like kinship almost ties with many Sahrawi families for like 2 generations back. In my particular case, I have inherited the knowledge as a person who was born in former Yugoslavia. I have inherited this knowledge from my parents that had been friends with many Algerian and Sahrawi exchange students in the good old days, Yugoslav days. And in any case, there are many different groups, many different categories of people with different motivations, different knowledges, and different attitudes. But what is of relevance here, and what we were trying to show in this paper, is that they are not taking the stage. It is not their show, and it is definitely not their agency that matters in this particular case. The outputs that I mentioned, they're there. They've obviously been there for many years now, as this is the main tool of dissemination of knowledge about Western Sahara. And it is regretful to some extent that there is not more of this form of dissemination, but in any case, there is a pretty constant flow of information, knowledge, and interest about Western Sahara. What is the most important point with the paper is that it is the Sahrawi people that lead the way. And it is the Sahrawi way and the Sahrawi method of knowledge transfer, knowledge co-creation that does take center stage in this particular case. So we are not trying to dismiss, let's say, the relevance of the difference between different groups of volunteers, different types of solidarity movements that are present in the camps. But we are just trying to say that this is, although something that's interesting and relevant for research, this is not the matter of our primary interest. Our primary interest is placed there in the ways in which, in non-invasive and non-constructed way, Sahrawi people have managed to transfer particular methodologies of social organizing and in a certain sense, social movement, knowledge co-creation. Sorry for being maybe too extensive with this.
No, that's very important thing. I don't know who is sharing, or myself or colleague there. Any other question?
Yes, we have another on the floor.
Hello, Stefan. Yeah, I have a question. I hope you can hear me. So first of all, from the presentation, I got the impression that you're emphasizing the agency of the Sahrawi and the liberation movement, which I think is very important and a good point. I was just wondering, as you have been critical of Realpolitik, I'm not sure whether I really got your point. Because I'm not, as I'm a political scientist, I'm also critic of Realpolitik. I don't like it. But on the other hand, working on the Western Sahara conflict, I think it matters in the sense that it's out there. So other states do Realpolitik in a very simple way. They say, well, Morocco is important for economic, security, and political reasons. We need to control migration. We need to control terrorism. And that's why we don't care about Western Sahara, but Morocco is more important. So it's very simple and even banal, you could say, but it seems to matter. So I was just wondering, what's your take on this? So are you saying that it is constructed Realpolitik, or that it is not helpful to understand what's going on? So I haven't quite got your point on that of Realpolitik. And then another question, which is a more general question, which intrigues me. So as you have emphasized the agency of the Sahrawi, and we know that people are, the Sahrawis in the diaspora, they are busy in France, in Belgium, in Spain, of course, but also in other countries to mobilize the diaspora, but also the grassroots, so the solidarity movement in these countries. But do you see a tendency there? I mean, you've talked to lots of people. So how would you assess the situation, right? So when you say agency, okay, so the Sahrawis are very active in these states, but how do you assess the, let's say, the effects or the results of these actions? And how is it in Serbia, for instance, as you are, or I don't know where exactly you're based, but so what do the people in your country think about this? I was just wondering, as you're working on this as well, so how's the situation actually in Serbia? I mean, do the people care, or do they know the conflict? Is there any knowledge about it, or how do they assess the situation? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's many questions, Stefan, and yeah, thank you for all of those. And this makes me regret even more that I was not able to physically come and participate in the conference in person. To begin with, the question of realpolitik, and thank you for asking this, because I was very much tempted yesterday to ask a few questions after your presentation. And it was due to technical circumstances. I was experiencing some sound problems on my end, so I just couldn't do it. But thanks for asking this now, because this will give us an opportunity to go back to that topic. In your presentation, you said times have changed, but Polisario didn't. And we are not in the post-colonial age anymore, liberating colonized people. So this is, as a matter of a fact, it's not a fact. This is an assumption, isn't it? Like, from a purely, let's just say, research or scientific perspective, this is something that's an assumption, a pre-assumption, shall we say, that one would base their opinions on if one was to opt for the realpolitik as their approach and a theoretical framework and a general, shall we say, outlook. Yes, this pre-assumption includes several other components, one of which being normalizing the idea of time progressing, shall we put it that way? So that would mean that something that was initiated and did not get radically transformed since mid-70s to this day should automatically be considered surpassed, obsolete, something that does not withstand the test of the current era, or whatever that would be, modernity as it is at this exact moment. So this is also like a particular type of an attitude that kind of fits in with the colonial agenda and kind of fits in with the colonial era thinking, because in social sciences, but unfortunately political science is kind of lagging behind, we have given up on this attitude of shall we say, linear thinking in terms of time passing inevitably, meaning movement towards progress, and that the change necessarily has to be only one type of change. So this is also like analyzing literature on Western Sahara and Sahrawi people, on Polisario. One can notice that in a manner which is not particularly objective nor scientific, Polisario and Sahara tend to be analyzed as something that is connected and associated with a time which is long gone, the era of decolonization, but also the era of living socialism. And again, these are kind of tags and attributes that are not based in any realities. This is done within a particular form of hegemonic thinking in order to disqualify and kind of put aside Sahrawi people's struggle and Sahrawi people's fight for self-determination and decolonization as something, as I mentioned previously, that is not feasible. So yeah, that's that part which pertains to realpolitik, but also agency to a significant extent, because I was, Stefan, particularly stimulated by your presentation because I am myself quite into concepts and defining concepts and where they are and where they stand, and the fact that none of them are neutral, value neutral. So defining agency is again something that's clearly a political, but also a cultural task, epistemological one to a large extent. So this kind of hangs on this previous thread, which pertains to realpolitik. But when it comes to the situation in other countries and the work that is done by friends and the work that is done by Sahrawi diaspora, there are many different situations, many different scenarios. There are many amazing forms of activism practiced in certain countries. Some of the friends groups are active, especially within the art scene, across borders, communities. Amazing work is being done. I have also been able to, from Serbia, to assist some of the preparations, including some of the artists from Serbia and from the Balkans, joining the preparatory actions for Artifariti Arts Festival. It's a topic of its own. A lot of research and a lot of work can be done and a lot can be said on these topics. But when it comes to the particular position of Serbia in this situation, it is, I have to say, because I am from Serbia, I have to say that it's a shameful one, and it is it is a position that communicates how detrimental compromises can be to the general idea of legality and legitimacy in the world of international, let's say, affairs. Serbia has opted, in a certain sense, for betrayal of Western Sahara by at some point taking back the recognition and deciding to support Morocco to a significant extent in their claim due to the sensitive situation or sensitive circumstance between Serbia and Kosovo. So it's a very particular case and a very particular situation related to that particular national context. But at the moment, for instance, I am in Australia, and I have to say that I am amazed and very pleasantly surprised as I have participating in some of the protests for Palestine here. I have been amazed by the fact how many people here have been made acquainted with the Sahara situation and how many people are joining initiatives and events which are presenting the case of Western Sahara here in different academic, but also like community activities in different cities of Australia. So yeah, I think that would be it for now. I don't want to talk for too long.
Okay, so just one last question before we do another question. We have another question on the floor. Não, eu ia fazer uma pergunta também, mas...
Hello, Maciel Santos. The discussion with Stefan we had also here after one of the panels, and what I'd like to know, because we have also here people from what you call friends of Sahrawi cause, we have academics, we have people who are both. But this raises a methodological issue, which is important to figure out, which is, you know, I'm sure you will agree with me that material circumstances, you know, the material correlation of forces frame the ideological momentum, which also interacts with this material correlation of forces. I think that's what Stefan had in mind when he said, and when he mentions the need to take real politics into account, because we live in a real world, okay? Now, this is true now as it was in 1975. I don't think we have a different situation as regards this interaction of material correlation of forces and ideological momentum. The thing is, or the question is, how to adjust political strategies when this correlation of forces change, which is the case now regarding to 1975. So my question is, according to this new correlation of forces, which also always frame political action, what is your view about the way to capitalize this Friends of Sahara movement into political action? Okay, because into a political lobby. And related question with this, according to this analysis of the correlation of forces, do you think that this will be the issue to change the situation in Western Sahara? For instance, most people think that a change of situation on the ground, for instance, raising the level of the war intensity, which is now going on in Western Sahara, or changes in the inner situation of Morocco, of course, would be much more important for this debate. But as it concerns us, we all, as academics or as friends of Sahara people, people in both situations, we just have to think about the first question, which is how to fit the political strategy today.
Thank you, Marcel. Yes, that is the most important question, isn't it? And this, I agree, as you say, I agree about that particular element of materiality and the circumstances which, as a matter of fact, did not change over the last 5 decades in a particularly radical way. But there are few, my belief is that there are few steps to kind of take and few leads to follow. And the first one being continuing to follow the lead provided by the Sahrawi people. Because the ultimate knowledge and the ultimate motivation to move towards liberation and future lies within and with the Sahrawi people. And regarding the networks of academics and friends, again, as discussed and analyzed in our paper, the main principle which appears to have been the shall we say, the principle behind this support network over decades is this principle of non-interference and non-pressure. And all the elements of this network have sometimes also with rudimentary coordination, which might have been a problem, but they have operated each for itself and fulfilling those duties, responsibilities, and tasks that came in a certain sense naturally, as something that could have been done without taking away agency and the power of decision making by the Sahrawi people. So this is the principle that we need to continue to nurture, and then each of us individually and as a collective, we need to continue to develop particular strategies, particular ways, particular platforms, formats, which we believe we can push forward and out into the world in order to give more space and more visibility to the problem. So yeah, I think that would be that would pretty much be it.
My question was the same as Professor Maciel. So we arrived ahead of time. So due to technical issues, I think we could make a technical break for now. We will resume at the 10:45 as scheduled for the third panel. So one last question. Sorry, we have one last question on the floor. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, mine is a general question, and it has to do with the title. In the first part, you have aid, and second part, self-determination. Probably you might not be able to answer it, but you know, aid is a humanitarian question, while self-determination is a political issue. Now, by focusing on aid, you are depoliticizing the very political issue of self-determination. And usually aid is simply helping people to survive, not living. Living has to do with the political issue, which is a self-determination. Now, in a practical political action, we see those are ardently against self-determination are willing to provide aid. Now we see in the issue of the Palestinians, those governments are not willing for ceasefire, but still they will be able to provide billions of dollars. And also we have witnessed that issue for the last 70 years in the case of Palestinians, giving them aid, but not dealing with the fundamental political issue, which is the self-determination. So probably your intention might not be that, but I see this problematic joining aid as a humanitarian and then adding self-determination, which is a very political issue. So I don't know how you look at it.
Thank you very much for this question. This is exactly what the point of our paper is. To demonstrate this problem, we are not promoting aid. We are not advertising these humanitarian and development approaches to solving the Sahara situation. No, we are actually problematizing this relationship. How do friends of Sahara reconcile what is in itself something that's referred to as spaces of aid, as you said, spaces which per se depoliticize, spaces which are also referred to as anti-politics machine? How do these spaces, how can they work together with solidarity, which is, as a matter of fact, something opposed to the idea of aid and humanitarianisms. So this is exactly also like what you had just explained now. This is one of the sub-chapters of a paper that explains why the emphasis of the movements and why this has also been something that had enabled the longevity of the movement of Friends of Sahara, the fact that the political had always come first, and that critical mass of the Friends of Sahara had always considered these political questions the urgent part of the problem, while the aid was something that was necessary for bare survival, and therefore not something to dwell on, not to... we have also compiled a number of works which, or statements by various representatives of solidarity networks, which have recorded over time different attempts to, as a matter of fact, developmentalize situation in the refugee camps, to kind of replace what is political and what is the struggle of decolonization with development agenda, pushing project and development programming kind of thinking and language. But from my own experience, this is also why the Sahrawi refugee camps are unique, because there's been multiple attempts over the years to, in a certain sense, to hijack the agenda. There's been major international NGOs that have tried to step in and introduce their programming and to let it kind of unravel and take over with this particular humanitarian mindset. But what I have witnessed in several such cases was that they would last a season or two. So yeah, sorry, but I had to share that experience too, because it's exactly matching what you said. Thank you.
I have one last question on the floor.
I will be brief, I promise. Thank you, Helena, for your very interesting presentation. It's just a comment. I'm agreeing with Professor Kitab. Aid, it's mainly humanitarian, but it's also a political issue. In fact, I come from a country where the Foreign Affairs Ministry is called Foreign Affairs Ministry and Cooperation, because it's part of the external action. And what you present, I think, is not unique. We find this in other scenarios, like Palestine, for instance. And the question is, when aid is not just part of the solution, but it's part of the problem, you have to make a political analysis. And I think that in both cases, no, in Palestine and in the Western Sahara, aid joined a political dimension who can be analyzed as necropolitics. And when we joined aid and necropolitics, you are talking about necro-aid, no? which is a dimension not very developed theoretically, but in fact it's when aid, it's part of the problem because it's a justification to do not act politically from the international community. It's just a comment, and I am very interested to deep in this issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question too. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And yeah, I hope that my previous answer was also useful because yeah, it's absolutely what I agree with everything that you've just expressed, and yeah, it's a pity that we will not be hearing the presentation on necropolitics, which was supposed to precede mine. I was actually quite looking forward to it, but yeah, as I mentioned, this is a part of the larger problem of aid and development cooperation, and something that's, as a matter of fact, quite well researched and well evidenced. Definitely functions as a part of the death project rather than a support to life. But as was mentioned in the previous question and comment, aid is here something that we also, us, let's say, as academics, this is not something that we can dismiss as a bad thing that it is, and say, oh, in this particular case, Sahrawi people can do without, they should do without, they should not do without, because this is something that enables survival for so many people in the camps in this period, which is a period in between. And not at any point in time is it possible to disregard the length of this wait of the Sahrawi people as refugees, nor the conditions in which they live. So aid is here to be seen as a necessity for survival, not as a favor, not as something that is legitimate to use to barter in order to suppress the political when it comes to Western Sahara and the Sahrawi people. But this is something that is owed and supposed to be provided for the Sahrawi people, for the refugees in this time of struggle and need. And here, I think it is also very, very important to be reminded of that most of us on a daily basis do not really think about how many food items we use on a daily basis, how many food items we need to survive the day or the week or the month. But for Sahrawi refugees, for the last 15 years, if not longer, every year has also been constant source of fear, stress, and insecurity in terms of food provision. Because every year, there's been...
We are almost, sorry to cut you your answer, but we're almost timing for the next panel. So I'm so sorry to cut your question. We need to...
Yeah, just to finish this sentence, basically, the last announced reduction in food rations was at 75%. So let's just take a moment and imagine what it would be like if our daily food intake was reduced by 75%. So much about materiality of food rationing and aid. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much.
So just to make a clearance, the point that you were talking about necropolitics is supposed to happen today at 2 o'clock. So it was not in your panel. I do believe we can make a 5-minute break in order to resolve our technical issues, and we see you here around 10:50 in order to resume to panel number 3, the years of waiting. So 5 minutes break. Iremos hacer una pausa para resolver problemas técnicos por 5 minutos. Estaremos todos de volta a las 10:50. Thank you. Hello everyone, again, sorry. We just resolved our last technical issues. We will resume as schedule for the panel number 3, years of waiting, part 2. I will pass the floor on to Bahia, who is going to moderate this session. Now en español. Gracias por esperar todos. Tivemos problemas técnicos que están resolvidos. Vamos a empezar el panel número 3. No panel de hoy pasará a Bahia, agua, que va a hacer la moderación de este panel. Gracias. Bahia, tienes el espacio.
Good morning. Thanks for you all to be here, sharing your culture, knowledge, and struggle. The following education is concerning with education. The following communication is concerning with education, as I am a teacher in Portuguese public school. The subject is education in context of oppression and exile, the case of Western Sahara. This communication seeks to observe and understand the educational policies determined and applied by the government of Sadr, a state waiting for decolonization, which, despite being dependent on various orders, like condition of not having access to territory and resources that belong to it, reveals resistance as a nation to face the challenge of education. So to start, we wonder how in a territory under oppression and exile, seeking for decolonization, could a state build educational system? This study is pertinent and in trying to understand the following points. This was my starting questions. How is education system organized in a context of oppression and exile? How is the heritage of Western Sahara preserved through the transmission of knowledge, which is necessary for the construction of identity? What useful lessons can the study of this context bring to other realities where are problems with formal education and implementation of educational policies? These answers helped us to understand how the identity of the nation state is constructed in a situation of oppression and exile through formal education. Concerned with the problematic of culture, Saint Martin affirms it is possible to resist, to promote culture even in an hostile environment, as a revolutionary attitude considered Sahrawi subjectivity. Sahrawi subjectivity promoted by nationalist acts as a successful way of subverting the attempts at hegemony of Moroccan identity. I've also seek to know how educational systems start to be organized. The sentence, knowledge is the guide of the rifle, mode for the first education Congress, reminds one sentence for the Amílcar Cabral quote, "It is the conscience of man that guides the weapon, not the weapon that guides conscience," Cabral in 1979. In this case, I wanted to underline the agency of people and introduction of cultural dimensions so that the task is global. We have how the system was organized. First, the Education Congress, then in the 80s, General Assembly of People, and at 90s, the establishment of regularity codes. These figures shows in the organizational chart from education system in refugee camps from Lanes 2018. The interdependence between the levels are reinforced, that also between national level and ministries. We can see Daira level, Wilaya level, and national level, all them interconnected and related with one each other and with the ministries. The educational level system is organized in levels from age 3 to higher education. The religion is not forgot in the construction of identity and is the construction and is part of the educational system. We have from children from 3 to 5, Tarbia, madrasas from elementary school, secondary education from 12 to 60 years. Vocational education is very practical and is important for society needs. We have vocational education in El Luaili Mustafa and Buziani Training Center and Smart Production and Service Centers, all them connected with the necessity of the people, car engines, bodywork and painting, carpentry, administration, car electricity, industrial electricity and welding, modular seminars with international support, electricity, electronic and basic computer components and computer installation. The higher education has helped for other countries, and cooperation is demanded. In higher education, we have help from Cuba, Algeria, Spain, Sahrawis. Young Sahrawis went there to have a degree in groups of 20 and with a tutor, and they stay there from 10 years to complete the higher education. We have the University of Tifariti with agreement with CEAUP, our Faculty of Letters in Porto, inter-university cooperation with various institutions, Cordoba, University of Madrid, training, scholarship, exchange programs, research and academic certification. How to promote visibility in Western Sahara? Culture is another tool to resistance and the construction of identity. It is important to show Sahrawi culture because there is the danger of elimination of culture by the colonizer. Quoting Cabral, it is vital necessity of imperialist domination is to practice cultural oppression. National liberation is necessarily an act of culture. In the Western Sahara, the transmission of culture is very important because there is a veritable blackout of news about Saharan cause, and SADR, with collaboration with other organizations, carries activities in the camps so that foreign visitors can get to know the situation of Sahrawi people. Among these activities, we have the annual marathon in February, when many athletes travel to the camps to take part in the competition and spend a week living with Sahrawis, getting to know the situation in firsthand. Another major event is Fisara Film Festival. We have data from Forum Sahara Libre in 2010 that shows one publication from UNESCO that brings hope to this consideration. According to UNESCO, literacy rates in refugee camps reached 96%, the highest literacy rate in African continent. CEAUP surpasses Portugal literacy and is almost on par with Spanish colonizer. According to the same source, in 1975, when Moroccan invasion took place and war began, the Sahrawi literacy rate was around 25%. What useful lesson can we study from this context when there are other realities with problems with implementation of educational policy? Quoting Paulo Freire, was the Brazilian pedagogue who fought and teach about pedagogy of oppressed, he said that education configured the struggle for emancipation and resistance, both formal and non-formal, as advocacy of critical emancipatory education carried out by the margins, which is articulated with construction of state in the climate of resistance, which the oppressed refugee students construct their self-determination. How nation-state identities construct in the situation of oppression and exile through formal education. It is necessary to legitimize internal and internationally. This makes the seek of self-determination a task to maintain. The state, like Weber and Jessup, the state is made by state apparatus, state population, and the state regular territory. And in the dynamics of a relationship with internal legitimation, the development of certain institutions allows the development of the state himself. The education system is one fundamental institution of the state that promotes development of the state. This brings special importance to education as an institution important for the construction of the state. In the seek of self-determination, every Sahrawi is a militant. What is a militant education? The recognition of CEAUP as such along the route of the occupation and self-determination is a struggle fought across territorial borders, occupied or not, in which Sahrawi as an agent of struggle and a builder of nation state. In the case of education, it is configured in idea of militant education. Quoting Borges, militant education is a process that presupposed a break rather than a continuity with colonial education. Shaped by utopian elements, militant education is a set of representations and practices that link politics and education in a much stronger and immediate way than the usual description of political links that education suggests. It is of paramount importance that struggle through education still occurs, although difficult. As we can see, there's lack of hope in youth because they couldn't see any change in situation after more than 40 years of colonial occupation. Generation after generation are falling into despair in face of this. Why is education inside a militant education? We have a total transformation of the old colonial education system, agency of population, recruitment, and for teaching in liberated areas, curriculum built from the scratch, community-based and elements promoting culture as a form of resistance. In this situation, although is not said, it is important to underline that the practice of education promotes peace education. Resistant education that takes place in Western Sahara is imbued with the call of peace. Sahrawi individuals trained and qualified to be representatives of SADC, defending the Sahrawi cause and implementation of norms of international law, only requesting for enjoyment of human rights of citizen and freedom as stipulated by the United Nations. What to learn from your experience? It may be compared with the experience of scholars who march to schools in liberated zones found by PAGC, a structure of education in Guinea-Bissau during liberation struggle. Cabral used to say, those who knows how to write and read should teach those who don't know. Amilcar Cabral was one explorer of education as a crucial tool for liberation and by restoring the rights and the dignity of the people as a politically conscious and militant citizens. In Guinea, by this moment, according to World Bank, a third of children under the age of 6 to 11 have never been to school, and the quality of education remain poor. Teachers are struggling with the government, they are not paid to teach, and the community is paying to have access to formal education. Thank you.
So, Baye, can you talk? You also Bahía, Bahía no está presente, vamos a pasar para la segunda presentación, que será de María José Lera Rodríguez de la Universidad de Sevilla, que va a hablar de estrategias educativas. So Bahía is not able to talk, so I will continue do the moderation. We'll pass on to our second presentation with Maria José Lera Rodríguez, the Sevilla University, who will talk about the educative strategy. Please, María José, te puedes presentar.
Ok, buenas tardes. Gracias por la organización. Pregunto si la presentación la hago en castellano o la hago en inglés o como quiera.
Como tú quieras. ¿Me oíste? Como quieras. Puede ser en inglés.
No te oigo. Ah, vale.
Puede ser en inglés o en castellano, como pretendas, como te va mejor.
Pero entonces en castellano. ¿Se ve ya la presentación o no se ve?
No estamos viendo apenas a ti. Pero está ahí mostrando algo.
Espera un momentito, estamos aquí. Controles, presentación. No, estoy compartiendo, ¿no? ¿Se ve la presentación o no se ve?
Se ve ahora. Te puedes empezar.
Aquí. Perfecto. Pues yo voy a presentar una experiencia que tuvimos en el Sahara, en Smara, el año pasado. Entonces, bueno, pusimos en marcha un proyecto que se llama Golden 5 en las escuelas para mejorar el bienestar de los niños y en general del profesorado. Entonces, bueno, aquí tenemos Smara y firmamos un convenio con la Universidad de Tifariti desde la Universidad de Sevilla para, bueno, iniciar más colaboraciones, ¿no? De las que ya hay. Y aquí, bueno, el proyecto estuve formando, ¿no? a profesoras, estudiantes. Aquí me tenéis, ¿no? En las sesiones de formación. Se puso en marcha en escuelas. Aquí tenéis una escuela de primaria, como son las escuelas. Estos son un grupo de estudiantes de Sevilla que fueron también a ponerlo en marcha y los estudiantes fueron a reforzar el castellano, ¿no? Porque por la antigua historia, los saharauis quieren seguir hablando en castellano, y entonces nos llamaron para mejorar también el castellano, ¿no? Que tenemos otra escuela con las condiciones que hay, y la chica, que es una de Sevilla, también poniendo en marcha clases en castellano, pero con estrategias psicoeducativas, ¿no? También fuimos a la universidad y también formamos a profesores universitarios. Aquí tenéis, por ejemplo, la Escuela de Enfermería, que es una parte de la Universidad de Tifariti, y aquí formando al profesorado de la Universidad de Tifariti, en este caso con el Golden 10, y ahora cuento lo que es todo esto, ¿no? Que bueno, ¿y qué es esto que hacemos, no? Entonces, esto que hacemos se llama el Golden 5 o el Golden 10. El Golden 5, aquí tenéis la página web donde podéis abrirlo y veis lo que es. Pero básicamente es un programa que enseñamos al profesorado a poner en marcha estrategias en el aula para mejorar el desarrollo psicológico de los estudiantes, para que los niños y las niñas se sientan mejor, y eso mejora tanto la motivación escolar como también la resiliencia, especialmente en contextos como este, ¿no? Un contexto bastante deprimido y con unas condiciones de vida bastante duras, ¿no? Entonces hicimos unas sesiones de formación, que tampoco fueron mucho, fueron unas 2 sesiones, aproximadamente 6 horas, lo que dedicamos a cada grupo, y estuvimos formando a profesores, tanto de primaria como de secundaria, a profesores universitarios, como hemos dicho también, de la escuela de enfermería, a estudiantes de magisterio de infantil, también a estudiantes de español, saharaui, todo, y también a estudiantes de árabe, maestros que van a enseñar árabe. Estos fueron los grupos que estuvimos enseñando, y nada, voy a pasar un poquito a comentar los resultados, ¿no? Los resultados fueron, le preguntamos si les había gustado el programa, y como veis la puntuación es altísima, es decir, fue mucho éxito, 4,5 respecto a 5, que era lo máximo. Después le preguntamos si era útil, ¿no? Si eso le servía para algo, y evidentemente también unas puntuaciones muy altas, de 4,3 respecto a 5. Y todos, el 100% de los 53 que formamos, querían más formación, ¿no? Y también, claro, le preguntamos, pero esto a ti, ¿para qué te ha servido? ¿Qué has aprendido, ¿no? Y aquí tenemos, yo creo que esto es lo más interesante, pues aprendieron, los que más dijeron es que aprendieron la importancia del afecto, la importancia de la dimensión emocional en las escuelas. La segunda fueron estrategias, que es justamente lo que el programa pretende, ¿no? Que se pongan en marcha estrategias psicoeducativas. También fueron casi un 30% dijo que aprendió estrategias. Otros aprendieron la teoría psicológica sobre el desarrollo, y otros lo que son las áreas para intervenir. En cualquier caso, esto es muy exitoso porque significa que en poco tiempo aprendieron muchas cosas. Y ya, pues lo que nos quedaría, bueno, pero ¿esto qué significa, no? ¿Qué significa? Pues, por ejemplo, en la teoría de afecto fueron muchas respuestas del tipo: he aprendido la importancia del afecto, que tengo que conocer el estado emocional de los estudiantes, dar afecto y amor, no castigar, que también, porque el castigo no ayuda, ¿no?, al desarrollo, tratar mejor o perfectamente a los niños y a las niñas, animarlos cuando algo hacen mal, acercarnos a ellos, sentirlos más. Como veis, toda una serie de dimensiones, cariño, que muchas veces damos por hecho, pero son fundamentales de poner en marcha en el aula, ¿no? En vez de estrategias, que también aprendieron mucho, esto también es muy interesante. Por ejemplo, la estrategia del boli verde, esta les causó mucha impresión. Esto significa que cuando un niño o una niña hace una tarea escolar y nosotros la corregimos, es fundamental corregir con un boli verde y señalando en grande lo que está bien y no lo que está mal. Esto supone un respeto al trabajo que te ha hecho el niño, se lo devuelves desde lo positivo, mejora la motivación, mejora la autoestima, y son cosas muy básicas que si no se cuentan, pues no se saben, son estrategias psicoeducativas, ¿no? Por ejemplo, hablar en positivo, nunca reñir, siempre buscar la parte positiva. Feedback en positivo, que sería lo mismo. Nombrar, que significa al niño hay que llamarlo por su nombre, con una voz cálida, estar cerca, tocarlo, motivarlo. El efecto audiencia, ¿no?, que significa hablar muy bien de los niños delante de los demás, y así se va creando una atmósfera positiva de aceptación de todos. El momento de oro, que significa recordarle a los niños y a las niñas algo que han hecho muy bien, ¿no? Y no tiene que estar relacionado con la escuela, pero otra vez, les hace sentir mucho mejor, ¿no? Y rumores positivos, que esa es muy simpática, ¿no? Que es hablar bien de los niños cuando no están presentes. Y eso hace que los demás también tengan una imagen más positiva, ¿no? Esto es muy interesante, que se hayan quedado con todas estas ideas solamente con 6 horas de formación, ¿no? Bueno, también dijeron las áreas, porque el Golden 5 o el Golden 10 tiene varias áreas, ¿no? Como por ejemplo la importancia de la gestión del aula, la importancia del aprendizaje, la importancia de las relaciones. Yo creo que eso es lo que más le ha quedado, ¿no? Unas relaciones que sean cálidas, basadas en lo positivo, ¿no? Y por último, las teorías, que no es ninguna tontería, ¿no? Las teorías que yo les expliqué, sobre todo hay una que es muy importante, que es esta que pone NPB, que significa las necesidades psicológicas básicas. Que básicamente aquí lo que le contamos a todos los maestros y maestras, que es que tienen que conseguir que los niños desarrollen la autonomía, tienen que elegir cosas en el aula, tienen que, esa es una necesidad, la otra necesidad es sentirse competente, que viene el que hace las cosas bien, centrarnos en lo positivo, un feedback positivo, y la otra es relacionarnos con ellos muy bien, darle mucho afecto, crear una atmósfera donde todo está permitido, donde el niño y la niña se sienten queridos, ¿no? Acogidos, ¿no? Y está muy interesante que todo esto lo tomaron en muy poco tiempo. Nos está diciendo que tenéis, ¿no? En el Sahara un profesorado muy proactivo, ¿no? A aprender más cosas, a llevarlas a cabo, sabiendo que sus condiciones laborales y de trabajo son también muy duras, ¿no? Entonces esto es muy positivo, ¿no? Y ya por último, casi ya terminando, y bueno, ¿y por qué esto es tan importante? Porque podemos decir que esto no es. Y sí, es importante porque lo que estamos demostrando con el Golden 5 o con el Golden 10, o da igual, el programa que se centra en lo positivo está basado en la teoría de las necesidades lógicas básicas, y esto es lo científicamente, es que los niños mejoran sus necesidades de autodefensa, significa que se sienten más seguros ellos mismos y a su vez eso también repercute en que se sienten mejor psicológicamente y tienen mejor rendimiento académico. Pero a su vez, cuando hemos hecho algunos experimentos en otros sitios, por ejemplo como Palestina, también observamos que mejora mucho la resiliencia, que sabemos que es la capacidad de superar, ¿no? Situaciones que no son nada fáciles de vivir. Y la infancia en los territorios, en los campamentos, no es fácil, no tienen una vida fácil estos niños y estas niñas. Con lo cual es muy importante, desde mi punto de vista, que soy psicóloga, que no soy política, que no vengo de ciencias políticas ni de otras disciplinas, sino que desde la psicología también es muy importante tener esta mirada, ¿no? El sistema educativo está ahí, está muy bien montado en los campamentos, pero la dimensión psicológica hay que también introducirla si queremos tener una sociedad, un niño y una niña más fuertes, ¿no? Mejor preparados y más fuertes, ¿no? Y poco más, ya dejamos para las preguntas, que espero que tengáis algunas, ¿no? Pero sí que hay una mejoría, ¿no? Cuando ponemos estas cosas en marcha, y no solamente en el alumnado, sino también en el profesorado, porque también se siente más unido al niño, se siente más competente en sus materias, en sus tareas, y va con más alegría, ¿no? Y eso es muy importante. Y vamos a donde más necesita, es decir, estos son pequeñas estrategias, como veis, el verde, el nombrar, los rumores positivos, son pequeñas cosas bien fundamentadas, pero son pequeñas cosas, pero provocan grandes cambios, ¿no? ¿Y dónde lo hemos puesto en marcha? Pues como veis, lo hemos puesto en marcha en el Sáhara, que fue el año pasado, pero también en Palestina, tanto en Cisjordania como en Gaza. Durante muchos años los resultados fueron muy positivos y demostramos, ¿no? Que mejora la audiencia en los niños, las niñas y en el profesorado, que se sentía muy bien, ¿no? Con la aplicación de estas técnicas, ¿no? Desgraciadamente no hemos podido seguir en Palestina porque yo no puedo entrar. Israel me ha echado ya de todas las maneras posibles y tengo prohibida la entrada a los territorios, ¿no? Pero también lo estamos poniendo en marcha en Colombia, por ejemplo, donde hay zonas que el posconflicto crea unas situaciones muy críticas en los colegios, porque los niños y las niñas vienen de todas las partes implicadas en el conflicto, con lo cual hay también que crear un clima positivo de aceptación. También lo hemos puesto en marcha con mucho éxito en Brasil, en algunas zonas muy empobrecidas, donde nuevamente, ¿no? A pesar de las condiciones tan duras del profesorado, que también cobran muy poco, está mal, al poner en marcha estos pequeños pasos se siente mucho mejor y ver como todos, ¿no? Salen ganando. Y ya está, no tengo mucho más que contar, salvo daros nuevamente las gracias por la organización de este encuentro. Y nada, y aquí dejo mi ponencia, que quizás sea un poquito distinta a las otras, pero creo que alumbra, ¿no? Y da un poco de luz a cómo podemos mejorar la vida de quienes están allí ahora mismo viviendo y sobreviviendo, porque las condiciones son muy duras. Yo estuve allí y lo confirmo, fue muy duro aquello. Así que muchísimas gracias por vuestra atención.
I'm trying to see if our last panelist is in the chat room, but I do not see her. She is also not on the floor. Elena.
Yeah.
So we're going to pass onto the debate phase. Estou perguntando se ela está com nós outros, porque ela não está no chat. Se não está, vamos a passar à fase das perguntas e respostas do debate deste painel. Quem perguntas, por favor. Ninguém? One question. Yeah, sure. Please. Una pregunta. Como te quieras.
Bueno, yo haría una pregunta, gracias a las dos, y haría una pregunta que a lo mejor puede conectar las dos ponencias. Ahora mismo la intención es de hacer educación para resistir, ¿no? Pero todos en esta sala creemos que esto se va a resolver de una manera u otra. ¿No sería bueno anticipadamente pensar en un modelo de educación que también incluyera un modelo de reconciliación? Es algo que va a ser necesario en el futuro y a lo mejor es algo que María José ya ha visto en otras localidades, en otros conflictos, que hay necesidad de mezclar esta dimensión emocional con prevenir algo de reconciliación de todos estos efectos que han tenido este conflicto tan long.
Posso responder? A Helena irá responder primeiro, depois, se tens contesta a Maria Rosa, te podes contestar depois.
I will answer in English. This struggle for decolonization is a very important struggle because it has means to construct the state nation. Every Sahrawi has a demand to help construct his home country because they are exploited from their territory, from their resources, and then from their culture. I don't know, I see that it's very difficult to reconcile with those who never ask for reconciliation. The reconciliation is something matched, is something done by two, not by one. How can Sahrawi say, I will reconcile with you if you even ask for, pardon, excuse me, I'm obliged, I shouldn't do that. They are robbed, they are exploited, and they are oppressed. How can we reconcile? Although the education in the Western Sahara is education for peace, what I see is there is never something related with retaliation, with violence. They are educated in peace. They are educated in their culture, with the language, their mother tongue, not with colonial language. And the dimension, the emotional dimension is important because they need to have hope. Without hope, they cannot continue to resist and to continue to study and to progress in their identity. I pass the answer to Maria José.
Maria José, ¿te quieres contestar la cuestión también? So, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Because you talk about Amílcar Cabral and the schools, escolas do mato.
Yes.
You see any kind of similarity between the two? Because we are studying, I know you are studying because we have personal relations. Not that that's aside. I know that you are studying this type of school, and you also have kind of knowledge in the field. Do you see any kinds of similarity between the two, the Sahrawi and the school that Amílcar Cabral trying to build?
Okay, at Escolas do Mato, founded by the party PAIGC, there was a break between the colonial school and the school practice at Escolas do Mato. Escolas do Mato were schools founded by the PAIGC in liberated zones during the struggle. At that part of territory at Guinea, some militaries were convoked to be teachers, not to fight with the guns, but fight with the education, with learning, and to share with the communities that are not scolarized the knowledge of learning to construct a country. It was a very important situation to build the country. That's why I try to compare education in liberated zones in Escolas do Mato with Sahrawi education, because they convoked hope and they worked together to construct the nation state. Because as I put it at the PowerPoint, education is one instrument of the nation. And if the nation needs to be built, education is one of the pillars of the building of the nation. That's why it's very important, and it's important not to lose the originality of the culture. And by this moment in Guinea-Bissau, with the help from with help for development in the context of education, I wonder if they are losing their originality in the culture, because the help is some form. The help in the education can be colonial rather than be original. That's the one problem that it might be interested to discuss and to understand. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, sure.
Yeah, I have a question to you. When it comes to education, so do the Sahrawis also learn from other liberation movements today? Do they study historical examples, ANC, Frelimo, PAGC, what else have you? I don't know. Many more liberation movements on the African continent. Do you do this? I mean, I know that Nelson Mandela, he studied Che Guevara, and I don't know what Lee did and the others, but so as you said, it's an education, right? So this is not only about learning how to prepare the computer or how to write, but also do you learn from our liberation movements? Do the Sahrawis study it? Is it taught in the school, or is that not the case?
I think this is a question for Professor Jafari. If liberated movements and militant education is taught on the university, I really don't know. I invoke militant education as a movement of struggle for education and construct of education as a pillar of the nation state. If it's taught at the school or at university, I really don't know. I ask for your help. If militant education is studied at the schools and at the university.
La pregunta es, profesor Stefano ha preguntado si saharauis en la escuela aprenden con los otros movimientos de libertad que acontecieron en África, como la Frelimo, Renamo. Por ejemplo, él ha hablado de que Nelson Mandela ha estudiado con Che Guevara. ¿Tienes alguna forma de responder a esta cuestión? Si en la escuela se habla de otros movimientos.
Exactamente, es buena pregunta. La educación nacional de militancia en general se da desde la primaria, lecciones sobre cómo se educan, cómo se puede educar un niño saharaui, qué objetivos hay de la causa saharaui, de la revolución saharaui. Y también se hace una comparación con los otros movimientos y precisamente movimientos africanos. En la universidad.
Let me traducir, por favor. Yes, they do learn. They instruct the kids the feelings of what is how do I put it? How the feeling of the needs for liberation, and also they also study some other examples from other African nations examples.
En este caso, en la materia de educación nacional, se enseña en la secundaria precisamente la historia de los movimientos de liberación, no solamente en África, sino también en América Latina.
So they do in fact also teach that in the second level of school. They teach not just about other liberation movement in Africa, but also in the world. So it's the thematic that they abord.
En la Escuela Nacional de Administración y Ciencias Políticas, que depende de la Universidad de Trinity, hay programas de estudio sobre más profundo sobre el historial o la historia de cada movimiento de liberación.
So in the Tiferet University, there is a department, if I'm not mistaken, a department of administration and political science. They also, thank you. They also teach in depth other liberation movements. So they do in fact about the same.
Y en otras ocasiones vienen algunos militantes de otras revoluciones en África y América Latina y vienen para hacer seminarios sobre sus revoluciones.
So sometimes they invite other other people from other liberation movements from Africa and around the world to teach to do a lecture about the movement and to teach the high school students.
Para intercambiar experiencia entre las revoluciones.
In order to exchange knowledge between both movements and about their revolution. So thank you so much, Professor Hatter. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Sure.
Can I put a question to Didi about the same question that Peter? The same question that our colleague put in the diaspora. How is the education, militant education occurs in Sahrawi diaspora? It does occur or it does not occur? Because it is important in the Sahrawi diaspora has an important, I think, has an important role in the process of decolonization. Is that education in diaspora a militant education or not?
Can you, 5 minutos.
Sí.
5 minutos. ¿Te puedes contestar?
Contestar sobre la traducción, por favor.
Ela ha perguntado para a Didi, para a Didi, sí, que se en la diáspora, ¿entendí? Por favor, 5 minutos. Didi.
Sí, en la diáspora hay una programa interna que está dada dentro de las asociaciones, y tenemos, por ejemplo, una asociación que se llama NOT, que es de España, que tiene un programa que es un programa específico para los niños desde 3 años a 6 años, después de 12, 16, después. Y les enseñaron la lengua árabe, en primer lugar, la lengua árabe, y también la historia, la historia de la Revolución, la militancia, que tienen una causa, que tienen un pueblo que está luchando por su liberación, y también les estudiaron también la convivencia también con los pueblos del mundo, y sobre todo los pueblos acayentes.
In short, yes, they also have an intern program for the diaspora to teach about the culture and values of the Sahrawi, history and motives and why they are fighting. And also they have this type of interchange with other students and other cultures, so they can also learn outside of their world as well. So the same occurs in Western Sahara and also in the diaspora around the world.
En España, por ejemplo, hay niños que vienen de las escuelas de paz y lo acogen familias españolas, y después la familia puede coger definitivamente para seguir sus estudios. En este caso, el Ministerio de Educación, en cada comunidad hay un profesor de árabe que le da la historia, la educación nacional, la geografía saharaui, los sábados y los domingos.
So Professor Hata just added that there is a program in Spain that calls Schools for Hope or for Peace that invites other Spanish nationals to receive a Sahrawi student, and they also get they learn in Spain the normal curriculum, and on the weekends they have the professor dedicated specifically for the Sahrawi cause, teaching them their language, their story, and their history. And they are invited in the end to, if the kid want to continue further their studies in Spain, they invite those families to receive the students. So this is also an interesting point. So we are almost at time for lunch. I will end this session for the morning. I do believe, doing an overview, that it was a nice morning. It was some very good communications, some very good points made in Spanish. Se voy a dar por terminada la sesión de la mañana. Yo acredito que todas las presentaciones fueron muy buenas. Se ha batido muy buenos puntos, especialmente este último sobre la educación, que muy poca gente habla. Vamos a terminar por aquí nuestra mañana, te vamos a almorzar y tenemos aquí de vuelta para el primer panel de la tarde a las 2 de la tarde. So we'll end the session here, and we're going for lunch, and we'll be back for the first panel of the afternoon around 2 o'clock. So thank you very much.